All right, welcome back, everyone. My name is DM Rhino, and we're having a look at another D&D horror story. Remember, if you like this video, please hit like, please hit the bell, ring the bell, subscribe, leave a comment, do all the wonderful things you do. And let's begin with today's horror story, of course. Um, we're looking at Hell First Campaign. Wow, that's a good title. And it's from Playful Cheater 8164. So Playful Cheater 8164 on Reddit. Let's have a look at this, right? So let's see. It's quite a bit. I'm just looking at. It might be a bit long, but we'll go through this as quickly as we can. At the first, at the time of the story, I was around 16 or 17 years old. I had just finished secondary school and finally had the opportunity to start playing Dungeons and Dragons, something I've wanted to try for years. I'd been playing for about a year when this all happened. Yeah. And for those that don't know, secondary school is usually we have it in South Africa. We don't have middle school. You have grade 1 to grade 7. That's our primary school, and then you go grade 8 to grade 12, which is about secondary school. And you can finish at 17 if you want. Yeah. Um, that's how I understand secondary. But let's continue. When I first began looking into a D&D campaign, I was nervous. New player nerves, you know? But after a bit of searching, I found a group online that accepted beginners. The party consisted of the dungeon master, a drow warlock, who we were called Sven, an elf, which class I really can't remember, a human puglist, oh, okay, a fairy cleric, and myself, a wood elf druid. The cleric's player and I actually joined the campaign for the first time on the first day, and she would later become one of my closest friends. Oh, so far so good. Yeah, that's why we play D&D, to make friends, to have fun, etc. Right? Since it was my first experience with D&D, I didn't know about things like session 0, or we didn't have one, so our introductions were a little awkward at first, but we eventually settled in. The first few sessions were quite quiet, nothing too eventful, so skip ahead to a few sessions where things started to change. I always have a session 0. It's great for new players, it's great for older players. You have to have a session 0, in my opinion. It was during our first big combat encounter that I realized something was off. Sven, the drow warlock, quickly established himself as what I would known as a backseat DM. During fights, he would constantly correct people on their roles, questioning the dungeon master's ruling and critiquing everyone's choices. What should I have what should have been an exciting battle turned out into hours of arguments and delays. Our session usually lasted 5 hours, but this combat alone could have stretched out to 2 or 3 hours. Sometimes fights dragged across multiple sessions, with little or no roleplay in between. As a new player, I assumed this was normal, but over time, it became emotionally exhausting. Ooh, yeah. Backseat DMing is never good. You gotta speak to the player, you gotta establish the rules. It's okay to question things, but don't tell other people how to play. That's always unless they ask for help, don't tell other people. I found myself becoming afraid to speak up or make my own decisions during combat or roleplay. I worried that if I did something wrong, Sven would comment and correct me in front of everyone. My turns would last less than a minute, and then I would have to wait half an hour before it came back around. It's a long combat. Oof. It sucked the fun out of what I had hoped would be creative and a collaborative experience. Yeah. It's Look, as a person who does do combat, I try to time my combats to a session if I can. I don't like long combats because they can get very mundane and boring, and more likely than not, they could turn into a wet noodle fight. And it's draining after a while. So I can understand where this person is. But there's a couple more, yeah, so we're gonna read on. Outside of combat, Sven continued to be disruptive. While role-playing, he would often raise his voice, swear excessively, and act aggressive in character. Both me and my cleric friend became really uncomfortable, especially because certain tones and shoutings were personally triggering for me due to my past. We eventually tried to address it with him. We politely asked him if he could tone it down a bit, explaining that it is becoming too much and it's overstimulating. Instead of taking the feedback, Sven brushed it off and said something like, "My character is a drow, and this is how she would act." He then turned it on us, claiming that we couldn't handle normal roleplay and making us repeat what we said multiple times, almost as if to mock us. I felt humiliated and small. Thankfully, my cleric friend had more confidence than I did at the time and spoke up more often, but it was still incredibly uncomfortable for both of us. This was the only one of many issues we faced during the campaign. There were so many little things that piled up over time, but these were the most impactful moments that stuck with me. Yeah, my thing with playing drow is that it is an ego. Like, some people understand it and other people use it as an excuse for their bad behavior, right? You can play a drow and be a nice drow. There's no reason why you can't. Just because you see a drow in like Baldur's Gate 3 be aggressive and things like that doesn't mean you have to be. Don't pick a class just for an excuse to be a jerk in the campaign. There's no reason for that, right? You have to work together as a team, and if you want to be a disruptive player and this person has brought it up and no one has and the DM hasn't addressed it, I would say that is a big red flag for me, and I would talk to the DM personally about this, and I would say, hey, if he's also a new campaign, if he's also a new player, you've got to tell him this is not how you play the game. You have to talk to everyone, and I think you've kind of like got onto the wrong mindset of what this game is. But there's a bit more here, so we got to see what else has happened. Let's see. Yeah. One of the few things that initially kept me motivated in the campaign was the personal villain I had created for my character. His name was Bill. Yes, inspired by Bill Cipher from Gravity Falls. And he was meant to be a manipulative, sadistic, and antagonist with a deep connection to my character's backstory. I gave the DM full creative freedom with Bill, telling him not to hold back. I was really looking forward to how this would play out in game. At first, it was amazing. Bill's presence was subtle but chilling. He would stalk my character, leave behind little reminders like yellow flowers, and appear in her dreams. But things took a strange turn when the DM revealed that the Puglist character also recognized yellow flowers. Apparently, in his backstory, his wife and family had died, and the last thing he had left was a yellow flower. At first, I thought, oh, just a small connection or coincidence, but the DM told me later that I would now be sharing my villain with Puglist. I hadn't been asked about or given any input. I tried to stay positive and told myself that maybe it could lead into something interesting, but I was wrong. Puglist became obsessed with the villain story, and during the final battle, it turned out into more of a chase between Puglist and Bill, with my character completely being sidelined. It really hurt me to see my personal story taken away and handed to someone else. By the time the fight ended, I had emotionally checked out. Yeah, that's not good. Like, if your player gives you a really good idea for a villain, speak to them, talk to them, say, hey, I actually really like this villain. Can I try and incorporate it more into other players? And then you could say that this villain did something to each of your players, and each of them have to try and find ways to cope with it. You could do that, right? But to exclude a player just because um one character becomes more obsessed with it, that's good, and that's not good, I should say. um and when you emotionally check out of a campaign, it's time to leave. Like, if you're not invested in it, then it's the DM's fault, it's other players' faults. Like, you've got to really take into account that things that have happened. But we'll read on because apparently there's more. To make things worse, during the same battle, my cleric's friend's character died. While the others ran off to continue chasing Bull, my druid stayed behind with her to comfort her during her final moments before revealing her, before reviving her, I should say. It was quite sad but deeply meaningful. It remains one of my favorite moments despite everything else. Yeah, that's a cool moment. And it's good to see that you and your friend had this great moment together in the session. And it could be a thing where you could say, you could point this out to the DM and say, hey, we're supposed to work together, and to revive a cleric. A cleric is always important in a campaign. You could have told them, hey, we can't leave our cleric behind. We need someone to heal us during this battle. We need a heavy hitter. Our cleric, we need to help us. So I would have used that example to cite to tell the DM that he's not doing a good job. And then we read on. After the session, I talked to the DM about how I felt frustrating in combat, and how I had been I can't read. I talked to the DM about how I felt, how frustrating the combat had been, how hurt I was about losing my villain, and how emotionally drained I'd become. And his response was, maybe if you actually roleplay properly and went after the villain, you would have had more scenes with Bill. Oh my goodness. Wow. Listen. Okay, that's that. Oh, that's an instant ban for me for the DM. I would have kicked, if I was DM and he was a player. I would have kicked that guy out of my game. I, like it says here, I was completely broke. That completely broke my spirit. Not after that, my cleric friend was kicked out of the campaign for causing arguments with Sven. In reality, she had only called him out about his behavior. Yeah, so it sounds like the DM and Sven's were friends, and he accepted that behavior. And also, if you're playing with new players that want to get into D&D, as a DM, it's your job to encourage them and help them and guide them to become better players. It's not like if you say, oh, maybe if you role played a bit more. Like, why? Oh, like if it's their villain, make it about their villain. Like, give them that opportunity to move forward with their character and say, hey, I like your villain, and and give them like a little bit of a story arc. Maybe you could have had their villain attack all the other players, and then each of the players have something to fight against, and then you could have a whole story about how your character and the Bill villain would talk about um what they did and how they affected you, and your group could be more concise, like connected with that, and say, hey, yeah, this, you hurt one of our friends the most, we are going to go and take you out as a group. Yeah, that's, oh no, that's a bad DM. Yeah, I feel sorry for this was a terrible DM. But there's also more, because of course there is. Somehow after that, I end up talking to Sven again for a short time. We became friends, and it was a part of our second campaign he invited me to join as a spectator. I decided to watch, thinking maybe things would be different. They weren't. Yeah, because this person's ego tripping. Yeah. Sven acted exactly the same way, correcting players, arguing with a DM, using an aggressive style of roleplay that clearly made people uncomfortable. At one point, one of the players nearly cried because of how tense things gotten. He also demanded to see my character sheet, even though I told him I wanted to keep my character's identity a surprise until later. The difference was that this new DM and the players weren't afraid to set boundaries, and after a few months of dealing with his behavior, they finally kicked him out. Shortly after that, I officially joined the campaign uh, called Prior Guard with my cleric friend, which my cleric friend, which already was a part of. The group quickly became my little D&D family. They were patient, supportive, gentle, and cared, making the game more fun for everyone. I'm happy that you found a better group, and I'm happy that the DM called out the behavior. Yeah, there are like when you don't backseat DM, like it's okay to, as I said, it's okay to question things in a role, and because like as DMs we get things wrong all the time. Like it's impossible to learn all the rules and everything. Like that's why there's the dungeon master guide, that's why there's the monster manual, the players guides, because we checking up things. But it's important to make sure the story goes forward and that everyone is having fun. But criticizing other players, making decisions is not good, right? We can't do that. Bullying and victim blaming is also absolutely not good. And the DM that you had was enabling this behavior because I think he liked the idea of probably like a player going all crazy, because sometimes it's like DMs are suckers sometimes for players that go like that. But also if he has had problems and other players have called him out, then you got to talk to this player and say, hey, you know, your behavior is not good. Remember, this game is about cooperative gameplay. You have to work together. You have to become a family. You have to drop your ego, drop your issues. Like, you have to talk to players and make sure that they're okay and role play. Because if you don't, then everything kind of falls apart and people don't enjoy the game. And if people don't enjoy the game, they're not going to come back to your game. They're not going to play with another player. Yeah. So I look, I'm very glad that you actually found a better campaign, and like, and that this was, I hate to say, like, this is a good learning curve for people, because you found almost all the red flags of a bad campaign in here, which is really good. And I'm happy that you found a group that is supportive and caring, and you made friends. Like, that's important, right? You made your cleric friend. Well done. Feel very proud of you. Well done, playful cheater. And I hope you in future, maybe one day, DM for yourself. It's really fun. I always recommend players DM in, because you learn a lot and you just have fun with it, right? Just even one shots. Yeah. But until next time, everyone, this was another D&D horror story. I hope you enjoyed it. And until tomorrow, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you then. Cheers, everyone. Bye.